Jake Morrison stood at the edge of the transport platform, staring up at the massive structure that would be his home for the next 2 years. The Kepler Military Academy stretched across the horizon like a metal city, its towers reaching toward the purple sky of this alien world. He had never seen anything so big in his entire life. The transport engine shut down with a loud hiss, and Jake grabbed his single bag from the floor. Everything he owned fit inside that one small bag. Back home in Kansas, his father had told him he was crazy for wanting to join the Galactic Defense Corps. Humans don't belong out there with those creatures, his father had said. But Jake knew better. Humans belonged everywhere, even among the stars. Another human stepped off the transport. Behind him. She was tall, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes that seemed to notice everything at once. Her uniform was perfect, every button in place, every crease sharp as a knife. Jake looked down at his own uniform and tried to smooth out the wrinkles. "Must be Morrison," the woman said, reading his name tag. "I'm Lisa Grant. Looks like we're the only 2 humans on this transport." Jake nodded and shook her hand. Her grip was firm and confident. "Nice to meet you. Have you been here before?" "I know, but I studied everything I could find about this place. My father served in the old Earth Defense Force before humans joined the galactic community. He taught me to always know what I'm walking into." They walked together through the academy entrance. The hallway was enormous, built to accommodate species much larger than humans. Jake felt very small as they moved past groups of alien cadets. Some looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs. Others had blue skin and 4 arms. One group had gray skin and huge black eyes that seemed to see right through him. A few of the alien cadets stopped talking when Jake and Lisa walked by. They stared at the humans with expressions that Jake couldn't read, but he didn't think they were friendly. "Don't let them bother you," Lisa whispered. "Humans have only been part of the galactic community for 10 years. We're still new to them."
Oh.
Jake wished he felt as confident as Lisa sounded. He had wanted this chance his whole life, but now that he was here, everything felt different. Back on Earth, he had been one of the best in his training class. Here, surrounded by aliens with technology he didn't understand, felt like a child trying to play with adults. They found their way to the main assembly hall, where all new cadets were supposed to meet. The room was packed with beings from dozens of different worlds. Jake recognized some species from his studies, but many were completely new to him. The air smelled strange, full of scents his nose had never experienced. A massive creature stepped onto the platform at the front of the room. It stood nearly 8 feet tall, with dark green scales covering its entire body. Its yellow eyes swept across the crowd of cadets before it spoke in a voice that sounded like gravel being crushed. "I am Commander Zethkar," the creature announced. "For the next 2 years, I will be responsible for turning you from soft civilians into warriors worthy of the Galactic Defense Corps. Many of you will fail. Some of you should not even be here." The commander's eyes stopped on Jake and Lisa. Jake felt his stomach tighten as those yellow eyes studied him like he was some kind of interesting bug. "The galaxy is a dangerous place," Commander Zethkar continued. "It requires strong beings who can think quickly and act without hesitation. It requires beings who understand that the mission comes before personal feelings. Some species understand this naturally. Others," the commander looked directly at the human cadets, "others will need to prove they belong here." Jake felt his face grow hot with anger, but Lisa put a gentle hand on his arm. When he looked at her, she shook her head slightly. She was right. Getting angry now would only prove whatever point the commander was trying to make. "Your first training exercise begins tomorrow at dawn," Commander Zethkar said. "You will be divided into mixed species squads. Your performance will determine whether you continue your training or return home in shame. That is all." As the cadets began to leave the hall, Jake heard alien voices speaking in languages he didn't understand, but he caught enough words in Galactic Standard to know they were talking about humans. Most of what he heard wasn't positive. A group of the lizard-like aliens approached Jake and Lisa as they walked toward their assigned quarters. The largest one, with dark red scales across his forehead, stepped directly in front of them. "Delosa, these are the famous humans," the alien said, his voice full of mockery. I have heard many stories about your species. How you fight among yourselves constantly, how you destroy your own planet for profit. How you can barely survive on one world, yet think you can protect the galaxy. Jake felt his hands clench into fists, but Lisa stepped forward before he could say anything. You're right, she said calmly. Humans do fight among ourselves sometimes. We have made mistakes with our planet, but we're here to learn and to serve. Alongside all of you, we're not asking for special treatment. We just want the chance to prove what we can do. The red-scaled alien laughed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. Prove yourselves? Tomorrow's exercise will show everyone exactly what humans are capable of. I hope you are prepared to be embarrassed in front of the entire academy. The alien group walked away. Still laughing, Jake turned to Lisa. Why didn't you let me say something? They can't talk to us like that. Lisa looked at him with those sharp green eyes. Because getting into a fight on our first day would prove they're right about us. We'll show them what humans can do when it matters. Words are cheap, Jake. Action is what counts. Jake nodded, but his anger still burned in his chest. He had come here to represent humanity, to show that humans belonged among the stars. Tomorrow, he would get his chance to prove it. The alarm rang at 4 a.m, filling the dormitory with its harsh sound. Jake rolled out of his small bed and quickly put on his training uniform. Around him, alien cadets were doing the same thing, some moving with grace, others stumbling. In the dim light, Lisa was already dressed and ready when Jake met her in the hallway. Her hair was pulled back tight, and her boots were perfectly clean. Jake wondered how she managed to look so prepared when he still felt half asleep. Did you sleep at all? Jake asked, as they walked toward the training area. A little? I spent most of the night reading about today's exercise. We're going into the combat simulation chambers. It's supposed to test how well different species can work together under pressure. They joined the other cadets in a large room filled with strange equipment. Weapons hung on the walls, but they looked different from anything Jake had seen before. The barrels glowed with blue light. He could hear them humming with energy. Commander Zethkar stood in the center of the room, his yellow eyes studying each cadet. Today you will learn if you have what it takes to serve in the Galactic Defense Corps. You will be divided into squads of 5. Each squad must complete a rescue mission in a hostile environment. Your goal is simple. Retrieve 3 wounded soldiers and bring them to safety. You have 2 hours. Jake felt his heart beating faster. This was his chance to show everyone what humans could do. The simulation will feel completely real, the commander continued. You will face enemy fire, difficult terrain, and situations that require quick thinking. Some of you will panic, some of you will fail. And some of you, double quotes, his eyes stopped on Jake and Lisa again. Some of you will discover you never belonged here in the first place. The cadets were divided into groups. Jake found himself assigned 2 Squad 7, along with Lisa and 3 aliens. There was Cass, a blue-skinned female with 4 arms who came from a water world. Next to her stood Thoric, one of the red-scaled lizard aliens who had mocked them the day before. The last member was Zip, a small gray alien with huge black eyes who barely came up to Jake's shoulder. Thoric looked at the 2 humans and shook his head. This will be a disaster. Humans are too weak and emotional for real combat. We'll see, Lisa said quietly. They were given weapons and basic equipment, then led to a large metal door. Commander Zethkar handed Jake a small device that looked like a watch. This will monitor your vital signs during the exercise, the commander explained. If you are seriously injured, it will remove you from the simulation. Try not to embarrass your species too badly. The door opened, and Jake stepped into what looked like a completely different world. The ground was covered with red sand, and the air was thick and hot. Strange rock formations rose up around them like twisted fingers reaching toward a dark sky. In the distance, Jake could hear the sound of weapons firing. The wounded soldiers are in a bunker about 2 miles that way, Kess said, pointing toward a cluster of rocks. But we have to get past enemy positions to reach them. Thorek took charge immediately. I will lead. Kess, you watch our left side. Zip, take the right. Out. The humans can follow behind and try not to get in the way. They began moving across the rough ground. Jake's training back on Earth had prepared him for difficult terrain, but this was different. The sand shifted under his feet, and the strange gravity made every step feel wrong. After 30 minutes of careful movement, they reached the edge of a valley. Down below, Jake could see the bunker where the wounded soldiers were supposed to be. But between them and their goal were at least a dozen enemy positions, each one shooting at anything that moved. "How do we get down there?" Zip asked, his voice high and nervous. Thoric studied the valley for several minutes. "We go straight down the middle. Fast and hard. No other choice." Lisa shook her head. "That's suicide. Look at those positions. Have the entire valley covered. We need a better plan." "Humans always want to talk and plan," Thoric said with disgust. "Real warriors act." Jake was studying the valley too, but he was looking at it differently than the others. Back home, he had spent years hunting in the woods with his father. This wasn't so different. He had to think like the prey and find the path they wouldn't expect. "What if we don't go through the valley?" Jake said. "What if we go around it?" "Around it," Thoric laughed. "That would take hours. We don't have time." "No, look." Jake pointed to the left side of the valley. "See those rocks? They make a natural path that curves around behind the enemy positions. It's longer, but they won't be." Watching that direction, Kess studied the path Jake had found. It could work, but it's very dangerous. One wrong step, and we fall into the valley. "Everything about this is dangerous," Lisa said. "But Jake's right. Going straight through is exactly what they expect us to do." Thoric looked angry, but he couldn't argue with the logic. "Fine. We try the humans' plan. But if it fails, the blame is on you." They moved carefully along the narrow path Jake had spotted. The rocks were loose and several times someone almost slipped, but they made steady progress. Jake felt good about his plan until he heard a sound that made his blood turn cold. The weapons they were carrying had begun to hum louder, much louder, and the blue glow was getting brighter. "Something's wrong," Lisa said, looking at her weapon with concern. Jake examined his own weapon and felt his stomach drop. The safety indicators were flashing red. These aren't training weapons anymore. Something's happened to them. Before anyone could respond, enemy fire erupted from the valley below. But this time, the energy blasts were real. Jake felt the heat as one shot past inches from his head. "The simulation has malfunctioned," Kess shouted over the noise. "These weapons are live." Jake realized they were no longer in a safe training exercise. They were in real danger with real weapons facing real enemy fire. Somewhere in the bunker below, there might be real wounded soldiers depending on them for rescue. This was no longer about proving humans belonged in the Galactic Defense Corps. This was about survival. The enemy fire was getting closer. Jake pressed himself against the rocks as another plasma blast hit the ground where he had been standing just seconds before. The smell of burned sand filled the air. "We need to get out of here," Thoric shouted. "This is not a training exercise anymore." "What about the mission?" Jake asked. "There might be real people down there who need help." Thoric stared at him like he was crazy. "Mission doesn't matter now. We need to save ourselves." Jake looked at his weapon. The red warning lights were flashing faster now. He could feel the heat coming from the energy cells. These weapons were not just live, they were unstable. If they overloaded, anyone holding them would be badly hurt or killed. Lisa crawled over to Jake, keeping low to avoid the enemy fire. "Something is very wrong here. Training simulations don't just malfunction like this. Someone made this happen." "Who would do that?" Jake asked. Before Lisa could answer, Zip cried out in pain. A plasma blast had hit the small alien in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him tumbling toward the edge of the cliff. Without thinking, Jake dropped his weapon and lunged forward. He caught Zip's hand just as the small alien was about to fall into the valley below. Jake's muscles strained as he pulled Zip back to safety. "Thank you," Zip whispered, his large black eyes filled with pain and gratitude. Jake looked at Zip's wound. It was bad, but not deadly. The plasma had burned through his uniform and into his shoulder. "We need to get you medical help." "No time," Kess said, her forearms moving quickly as she tried to find cover. "More enemies are coming." Jake looked down into the valley and saw movement. The enemy positions were sending out patrols. Soon they would be surrounded with nowhere to go. The emergency exit, Lisa said suddenly. Every simulation has an emergency exit. If we can get to it, we can get out of here. Where is it? Jake asked. Lisa pointed toward the bunker where they were supposed to rescue the wounded soldiers. It has to be there. That's the center of the simulation. Jake felt his heart sink. The bunker was at the bottom of the valley, surrounded by enemy positions. Getting there would be almost impossible. We can't make it, Thoric said. Look at it. All those enemies, and Zip is hurt. We should surrender. Surrender to who? Jake asked. This is a simulation. The enemies aren't real people, they're just programs. They can't accept surrender. As if to prove his point, another wave of plasma fire erupted from the valley. One of the blasts hit the rock right next to Thoric's head, sending pieces of stone. Flying Jake studied the situation. They had maybe 10 minutes before the enemy patrols reached their position. Zip was hurt and couldn't move fast. Their weapons were unstable and dangerous to use, and they were trapped on a narrow ledge with nowhere to go. But Jake had an idea. It was crazy and dangerous, but it might work. I can get us to the bunker, he said. How? Lisa asked. Jake pointed to a series of rock formations that formed a natural bridge across part of the valley. If we can get to those rocks, we can move across the valley without going through the enemy positions. That's insane, Thoric said. Those rocks are barely connected. One wrong step and we fall. Do you have a better idea? Jake asked. Thoric looked around at their situation and didn't answer. Jake started moving toward the rock bridge. Stay close and move carefully. Don't look down. They began crossing the dangerous path. Jake went first, testing each step before putting his full weight on the rocks. Behind him, Lisa helped Zip move despite his injury. Kess used her forearms to maintain balance on the narrow ledge. Thoric came last, complaining with every step. They were halfway across when Jake heard a sound that made his blood freeze. His weapon was making a high-pitched, whining noise. The energy cells were about to overload. Hey everyone, drop your weapons, Jake shouted. Now, they all threw their weapons away from the rock bridge. Jake's weapon hit the valley floor and exploded in a ball of blue fire. The other weapons followed, each one exploding with enough force to shake the ground. Keep moving, Jake said. We're almost there. They reached the other side of the valley just as enemy patrols arrived at their old position. Jake felt relief wash over him as they found cover behind the bunker walls, but their relief didn't last long. As they approached the bunker entrance, Jake realized something terrible. The door was locked from the inside, and there was no way to open it from the outside. We're trapped, Zip said weakly. Jake looked around desperately. They were surrounded by enemy positions. Their weapons were gone, and they had no way to complete their mission or escape. That's when he heard the sound of approaching footsteps. Heavy footsteps, moving fast. Someone's coming, Lisa whispered. Jake turned to see a squad of enemy soldiers running toward their position. These weren't the automated defenses they had been fighting. These were real soldiers, heavily armed and moving with purpose. Jake realized with growing horror that this wasn't just a malfunction simulation. Someone had turned it into a real battle zone. Someone wanted them dead, and they had less than 50 seconds before the enemy soldiers reached them. Jake looked at his squad mates. Zip was badly hurt. Thoric was paralyzed with fear. Kess was brave, but had no combat experience. Lisa was the only one besides Jake who seemed ready to fight. 50 seconds to live or die. 50 seconds to prove that humans belonged among the stars. 50 seconds to show what real courage looked like. Jake made his choice. Jake counted the seconds in his head. 45, 44, 40-3. The enemy soldiers were getting closer. Jake could see their weapons glowing bright red, ready to fire. These were not training weapons. These were real military-grade plasma rifles that could cut through metal. We need to run, Thoric said, his voice shaking with fear. Where? Jake asked. We're surrounded. 38 seconds? Jake looked at his squad. Zip was leaning against the bunker wall, his shoulder bleeding badly, when Kess was trying to help him, but she didn't know much about treating wounds. Thorek was looking around wildly, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. Lisa was the only one who seemed calm. She was studying the approaching enemies, counting their numbers and watching their movements like she was planning something. 30-2 seconds. Lisa said quietly, "I need you to trust me. What are you thinking?" Bunker door. It's locked from the inside, but the lock mechanism is electronic. If I can get to the control panel, I might be able to override it. Jake looked at the control panel. It was on the other side of the bunker entrance, completely exposed to enemy fire. Anyone who tried to reach it would be an easy target. 20-8 seconds. That's suicide, Jake said. They'll shoot you before you get halfway there. Not if they're shooting at something else, Lisa replied. Jake understood immediately. Lisa wanted him to create a distraction, draw the enemy fire while she tried to open the door. It was a good plan, but it meant one of them would probably die. 23 seconds. Jake looked at his squad mates again. Zip was getting weaker. His breathing was shallow and his skin was turning pale. If they didn't get him medical help soon, he would die. Kess was brave, but not trained for combat. Thoric was too scared to be useful. That left Jake and Lisa. One of them had to be the distraction. One of them had to step into the open and face the enemy fire. 18 seconds. Jake made his decision. "I'll do it," he said. "I'll draw their fire." "No," Lisa said firmly. "I'm the better shot. If anyone's going to disable those soldiers, it should be me." "We don't have weapons," Jake reminded her. Lisa smiled grimly. "I don't need weapons. I need you to trust me and do exactly what I say." 14 seconds. "I give the signal, you run for the control panel," Lisa continued. "Don't look back. Don't stop. Just run." Jake wanted to argue, but there was no time. The enemy soldiers were almost in position. He could hear their boots crunching on the sand. 10 seconds. Lisa picked up a piece of broken rock from the ground. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was something. She looked at Jake one more time. "Whatever happens, get the others to safety," she said. 7 seconds. Lisa stepped out from behind their cover. The enemy soldiers saw her immediately and raised their weapons. Jake watched in horror as multiple plasma rifles aimed at his friend. 5 seconds. "Now," Lisa shouted. Jake ran. He sprinted toward the control panel as fast as he could, expecting to feel plasma fire burning through his back at any moment. But the shots never came. Instead, he heard something that made his heart stop. The sound of plasma rifles firing, multiple shots, and then Lisa's voice crying out in pain. Jake reached the control panel and spun around. Lisa was on the ground, her uniform burned and smoking. Blood was spreading across the sand beneath her. She wasn't moving. The enemy soldiers were advancing. On her position, their weapons ready to fire again. Jake's training took over. His hands moved across the control panel, inputting the emergency override codes that every cadet had memorized. The bunker door began to open with a grinding sound. "Kess!" Jake shouted. "Get Zip inside now." Kess lifted the small alien and carried him through the opening door. Thoric followed them, still looking terrified. But Jake didn't go inside. Instead, he ran toward Lisa. The enemy soldiers saw him coming and turned their weapons on him. Jake dove to the ground just as plasma fire erupted over his head. He crawled forward, using the sand and rocks for cover. Lisa was still alive when he reached her. Her eyes were open, but she was breathing in short, painful gasps. The plasma burns covered most of her chest and arms. "The door," she whispered. "Did you get it open?" "Yes," Jake said. "The others are safe." Lisa tried to smile. "Good. That's good." Jake looked at her wounds. They were bad. Very bad. Without immediate medical attention, she would die in minutes. He made another decision. Instead of trying to carry Lisa to safety, Jake did something that surprised everyone watching. He pulled off his uniform jacket and used it to apply pressure to Lisa's worst wounds. Then he took off his dog tags and pressed them into her hand. "Hold these," he said. "Don't let go." Jake picked Lisa up in his arms. She was heavier than he expected, and his muscles strained with the effort. But he didn't stop. Step by step, He carried her toward the bunker door. The enemy soldiers fired at them, but their shots went wide. They seemed confused by Jake's actions. In their experience, soldiers left wounded comrades behind to save themselves. They had never seen anyone risk their own life to save someone who was already dying. Jake made it to the bunker door just as the emergency lockdown sequence began. In 30 seconds, the door would seal shut and trap anyone still outside. He stumbled through the entrance, still carrying Lisa. Her blood covered his uniform, his hands, his arms. But she was still breathing, still alive as the bunker door sealed. Shut behind them, Jake looked down at Lisa. She was unconscious now, but her fingers were still wrapped around his dog tags. They had made it. All of them. Against impossible odds, they had survived. The bunker was dark and quiet. Jake sat on the floor with Lisa's head in his lap, watching her breathe. Each breath was weak and shallow, but she was still alive. That was all that mattered right now. Kes was taking care of Zip in the corner. The small alien's shoulder wound had stopped bleeding, but he was still very weak. Thoric sat by himself, staring at the sealed door like he couldn't believe they had made it inside. "How long before help comes?" Jake asked. "The emergency signal. Should have gone out when the lockdown started," Kes said. "But I don't know how long it will take them to get here." Jake looked down at Lisa. Her face was pale and covered with sweat. The makeshift bandages he had made from his jacket were soaked with blood. She needed real medical help, and she needed it soon. "Why did she do it?" Thoric said suddenly. "Why did she risk her life for us? We're not even the same species." Jake didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure Thoric would understand, because that's what humans do, Jake said finally. "We don't leave people behind." "But it makes no sense," Thoric continued. "In my culture, the strong survive and the weak are left to die. It's the natural way." "Maybe that's why humans are different," Kes said quietly. "Maybe that's why we need them in the Galactic Defense Corps." Before anyone could respond, they heard sounds from outside the bunker. Heavy footsteps. Voices shouting orders. Someone was cutting through the sealed door with high-powered tools. Jake felt his muscles tense. What if it wasn't rescue workers? What if it was more enemy soldiers? The door exploded inward with a shower of sparks and metal. Armed figures rushed through. The opening, weapons ready. But these weren't enemies. Jake recognized the uniforms of Academy security forces. "Medical team now," the lead officer shouted. "We have wounded cadets in here." Within seconds, the bunker was full of medical personnel. They rushed to Lisa first, scanning her wounds with strange devices that glowed blue. Jake watched as they worked, afraid to hope that she might be okay. One of the medics announced. "But we need to get her to the medical center immediately." They lifted Lisa onto a floating stretcher and rushed her out of the bunker. Jake tried to follow, but the security officer stopped him. "You need medical attention too, Cadet," the officer said. Jake looked down at himself. He was covered in Lisa's blood and his own clothes were torn and burned. But he didn't feel hurt. "I'm fine," Jake said. "I need to go with her." "That's not your decision to make," the officer replied. "You're all going to the medical center for examination. Then you're going to answer a lot of questions about what happened here." An hour later, Jake sat in a small room in the medical center. A doctor had cleaned his cuts and burns, but his mind was still in the bunker with Lisa. No one would tell him how she was doing. The door opened and Commander Zethkar walked in. The large reptilian's yellow eyes studied Jake carefully before he spoke. "Tell me what happened in the simulation," the commander said. Jake told him everything. Malfunction with the weapons. The enemy soldiers who seemed real. The way Lisa had sacrificed herself to save the others. Commander Zethkar listened without interruption. When Jake finished, the commander was quiet for a long time. "The simulation was sabotaged," the commander said finally. "Someone replaced the training weapons with real ones. Someone wanted cadets to be hurt or killed. Who would do that?" Jake asked. The commander's expression was unreadable. "Someone who thought certain species didn't belong in the Galactic Defense Corps." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "You mean someone did this because we're human?" "The investigation will determine the truth," Commander Zethkar said. "But I want you to know something, Cadet. What you and Lisa did today was extraordinary. Saved lives at the risk of your own. That is the highest honor in military service. Is she going to be okay? Jake asked. The doctors say she will recover completely. It will take time, but she will be fine. Jake felt relief wash over him like a wave. Lisa was going to live. There's something else, the commander continued. The other cadets have been talking about what they saw today, how you carried Lisa to safety, how you refused to leave anyone behind. Word is spreading throughout the academy. What kind of word? That humans are exactly the kind of warriors the galaxy needs. Brave, loyal, and willing to sacrifice for others. The cadets who mocked you yesterday are telling everyone they want humans on their squads. Jake didn't know what to say. He'd come to the academy to prove that humans belonged among the stars, but he had never expected it to happen this way. Can I see her? Jake asked. Commander Zethkar nodded. Follow me. They walked through the medical center to a quiet room where Lisa was sleeping in a bed surrounded by alien medical equipment. Her wounds were covered with healing patches that glowed. Softly in the dim light, Jake sat down in a chair next to her bed. On the small table beside her, he saw his dog tags. She had held on to them through everything, just like he had asked. Lisa's eyes opened slowly. When she saw Jake, she smiled weakly. Did everyone make it? She asked. Everyone, Jake confirmed. Zip is going to be fine. Kess is okay. Even Thoric is asking how you're doing. Good, Lisa said. That's all that matters. Jake picked up his dog tags from the table and put them back around his neck. But as he started to stand up, Lisa caught his hand. Jake, she said, why did you come back for me? Could have stayed safe in the bunker. Jake looked at her, thinking. About everything that had happened? About the choice he had made to risk his life for a friend? About what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of different species? Because that's what we do, he said simply. We don't leave our people behind no matter what. Lisa smiled and closed her eyes. That's what I thought you'd say. As Jake sat, watching over his friend, he realized something important. They'd come to the academy to prove that humans belonged among the stars. But what they had really proven was something much more valuable. They had shown that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or weapons or even courage. It was the simple fact that humans would never abandon each other, no matter how dark things got. That was exactly what the galaxy needed.